muchachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together, share albums with each other, an album at a time, take turns, do the good things. Like a little book club for music. It's fun. Join us. I'm Petey Rave, your man with no plan. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got David.
I wonder what Nastya Lukin is doing right now.
We've got Drew.
Every week you lie to these people because you say you have no plan, yet I show up at the time that you dictate that we're recording this podcast, and it's being recorded. So I don't know about this no plan business, sir.
And you say the same thing every time.
That's the fun part. And of course, we've got, for once again, still here with us as our rotating fourth chair for this set of episodes, Mike, aka Cereal Sensei. How you doing, Mike?
French toast is the best breakfast food of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Except for cereal.
Cereal's fantastic. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Or French Toast Crunch.
My man. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. My man, Petey Ray.
That's melding of the two.
I will agree with the Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but I will agree also with the French toast. If you're sitting down for like a breakfast, French toast is.
Oh,
sausage, some eggs.
Cereal's just more versatile because you don't have to work at it. You just pour it in a bowl and dump some milk on it. You're done.
But there is a certain satisfaction of cooking like a full-on protein breakfast for yourself, like eggs, the sausage, the bacon, just having all of that for yourself, just all the protein.
Where it's not just breakfast, it's breakfast. But that being said, we're not talking about breakfast today. At least only a little bit. We're talking about music, talking about an album. And it's finally his turn. The provider of the album this week is Mike. Mike, what do you have for us this week?
Today we'll be discussing the 2016 album from New York rapper Tonedeff. This album is entitled Polymer. Just a quick backstory on the album. Is actually comprised of 3 EPs, or technically 4, that form Voltron and were rearranged to make an album. It was the Glutton EP, Demon EP, Hunter EP, and then the Phantom EP was the last one. And then they form Voltron, and then we get Polymer. So that is the album we will be discussing today.
Yes. Also, other note, this Tonedeff and I share almost the same birth name, except for after the second letter of the last name. Where I am Pedro Antonio Ravelo, and he is Pedro Antonio Rojas Jr. Pedro Antonio, like so.
Close enough.
Me and him have that going on, kind of connection. Plus, we're both Cuban. He's got some Colombian in there as well, but we're both Cuban, and that's fantastic. Yeah, let's talk about this album. Let's talk about some expectations. David, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, I looked at Tonedeff's history, and I saw he's done a lot of features, a lot of guest spots, and has appeared on a lot of compilations. And Mike, when I was looking around, one, I noticed Immortal Technique, which immediately got my attention. Like, okay, this guy's good, first of all. And Mike, when I started looking up his history, I wanted to ask you, the term rapidy rap came to mind, Mike Will. Would you classify, or would some detractors classify Tonedeff as rapidy rap?
Yeah, I think the term, backpack rap gets thrown around a lot. Is he a
lyrical miracle?
Yes, he's in the deepest part of the backpack rap. Like, he's in that last zipper. Like, he's definitely way back there. Yeah, so some would definitely say that as a knock on him. I would definitely could see that.
And those people need to take their life less seriously. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
So I was expecting some good lyricism because the name I recognized, and I recognized it because he worked with KRS-One on a diss track called Clear 'Em Out. That was pretty much just making fun of Nelly for like 5 minutes, which is great.
How much time do they spend on the eye bandage?
Oh God, I would have to re-look up the lyrics. Sorry. It's been a minute, as it has been with Nelly's career. It's been a minute.
Yes.
That was a weird time.
Yes.
Was, but if you have people like KRS-One in your corner, I know you're probably going to be pretty smart and your flow is going to be pretty good. So I was excited for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was looking forward to just. I didn't know what to expect just because I hadn't recognized the name. But once I got started with the album and then I read up on his associations and his history, then I was excited and hopeful and looking forward to this. But yeah, Mike, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes elements that stand out?
Ooh, man, this album it's heavy. There's a lot. There's a lot going on with this album.
It's dense.
Yeah, it's very dense. Musically, technically, this is classified, I guess, as a hip hop album. But when you listen to it, I mean, it has hip hop elements, but there's a lot more musically going on. I feel like and not to get into specific tracks yet, but the first like 2 tracks on this song for me sounded like the beginning of like a movie trailer. Like it's very cinematic at points. Also at times it can be really chaotic. It can be like uncomfortable. It could get really dark. Yeah, like production wise, he hits a lot of different areas of the music spectrum. Like it's hip hop and label just to classify it as something. But if you listen to it, it's a lot more. And that's just the music side. The vocal side, that's a whole nother, beast in terms of how he uses his voice on these songs, rapping, singing, harmonizing, different vocal effects. Yeah, I think dense is just the word to musically describe this. There's a lot to unpack.
Mm-hmm. David, how would you describe this album musically?
I won't use the word dense again, but some themes that came out were Tonedeff is very, 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 very mad at the music industry. Which, understandably so, the recording industry can be a bit of a pain for artists that don't really fall into a particular box or a particular realm. So, understandably, that there is a lot of talent and a lot of creativity all over this album. But I think that at times he kind of lets his angst and his intense emotions and his raw emotions almost overpower the entire package. It's really, really emotional, and you can hear that he's pouring everything he's got into this. But it's almost a little too much. The talent and the creativity is there, but he's really, 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 really sincere.
Yeah.
Extremely sincere.
Yes. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, for one, everybody's mentioning the word dense. I would say this, though, if one word comes to mind, it would be inventive. There's a lot on this album that's just really, really cleverly done. Whether it be wordplay choices, flow, music choices, just how the beats are constructed in general. All of them sort of add a piece that just really feels inventive and really cool and really well thought out. I harp on composition sometimes, but like I feel like these were very, very well constructed. Each song was. David said it. There is a lot of angst and anger in this. Now, being somebody that listened to a lot of very angry punk rock when he was a kid. I sort of dig that emotion in music sometimes. Having that anger, especially if it's well placed, I think can be like really intriguing to me, just because it's something that like I can identify with and latch onto. Which is for someone like him, someone like Tonedeff, I think is sort of warranted. It's that idea of like, unless you make the record that can get you popular, you can never be creative and like break in. You have to like make the thing that makes you popular, and then you can be a little bit more creative. Especially in like rap and rock and roll and stuff like that. I feel like that's part of it. The thing that really hit me over the head was the flow. Like he has a lot to say, and he's saying it all at one time, but it never loses the beat. There is a control. Like there is some rappers who will try to do this, and it is word vomit. It is just, it's all coming out and there's no thought to it. But here it's like a snare roll during a drum fill. Like I was picking up on like paradiddles that were coming out like while he was rapping, which I thought was really, really cool. And it, again, it's that thing of, oh, this is something that was pieced together and thought out and sat down and penned this way in a very specific, very purposeful way. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, this is a really cool like album in general. It's very emotional. I would say it's very, as we talked about, very emotional, very expressive. It's very diverse in like what he's doing and what he pulls out, and he's got a lot of tools at his disposal. He's got a lot of like skills that, you know, he can rap, he can sing. It's not always just a beat and some bars. He's at times just dropping bars over some beats. At times he's composing a song, but it all is in service of different themes and different stories and different emotions he's trying to convey. It goes a lot of different places, and I think overall it is successful in that journey, which is really cool. And as we talk about some of the tracks, let's get into some of the key tracks, because like it's definitely interesting once we kind of drill down. Mike, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Man, there are a lot, but I you know, for sake of the length of this podcast, I can only pick a few. But I'm a big person on very strong intro tracks, so I really love the first track, "The Things You Don't See Coming." I love just like the cinematic feel, the way that track just kind of builds up. Like I said, it sounds like the opening to like a movie trailer. Like I envision this album as like, this is like his life, not from beginning to end, but he's just basically giving you like an overview of his life. And "The Things You Don't See Coming" is literally like the opening scene. Actually, I just love how that track just really builds up and gradually builds up. And it's like the word compose, you guys say a lot. It sounds like a composition. Like this was really sat down and thought about. So that was a standout. "Competitive Nature" is another song on here that I love. Of all the tracks on this album, to me, this is the one that kind of sounds like the most quote unquote hip hop. Because like I said, a lot of these other songs, they have hip hop elements, but they have so much else really going on. This one, to me, kind of all the tracks, did sound like a straight up hip hop track. I'm a sucker for DJ scratches, so that one stood out. And I love the content to where Deej mentioned it earlier. He kind of comes to terms with himself in this track about how like angry he is with everything, and he's kind of realizing like, I have to let this competitive nature go, because if I don't, it's not going to get me anywhere. Like I kind of just need to do my own thing. So I love that he was kind of coming to grips with himself in that song. And the flow is just, his flows are, he's technically like one of the most skilled rappers I've ever heard. Like in terms of like breath control, he'll spit like 80 syllables in a line, but like he does it so well. I'll just tell people, he has a documentary called Polyoptics that actually shows like the pretty much like how this album was created. Just watch him in the booth. This dude he's a machine. It's crazy to watch.
Dude got
Narcissist. Yeah, a lot. Narcissist was another favorite. Just love how like menacing that beat is. And the last track I'll mention that was a standout for me was Five Sisters. That track stood out for a myriad of reasons, but mainly because I've heard a lot of artists, your dad will get a shout out, your mom will get a shout out. I don't hear people talk about siblings often. And I thought it was kind of genius the way he did it, to where he took the stories of all of his sisters and he kind of explained all of their personality traits and then like reconnected it back to his mother and how they all like kind of helped raise him in a way. It was really genius, I thought, the way he really like told their stories and then brought it back to himself like full circle. Which you get a lot of on this album, a lot of personal storytelling, but that one really stood out just because I've never heard anybody really do it in that way and in the way that he did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really well done. Deej, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Mike already said everything that needed to be said about competitive nature. Moment. I remember Moment really sticking out in my mind. Just going back to that song over and over and over again. Also, Glutton. I felt like Glutton was a really creative song, really different. And I always vote for different, so Glutton was one that really stuck out to me. I can recommend that this is an album that has a bunch of tracks where if you're going to listen to this album, keep the tab for the lyrics open, and that's one of them. I will also say that for Demon, which was not exactly my favorite because I felt like he goes a little bit too far with the speed and the flow. It gets a little bit over the top. Like, okay, dude, I need you to bring it down just a little. Like, the actual lyrical content of the song was cool in that kind of horrorcore, grindcore way, which I'm totally cool with. But it was like, all right, man, I dig it, but I need you to slow it down just a little. Also, the song Sunrise, I love the beat of it and I love the message, but it was just a little hard to hold on to. Like I said, it's really, really good, but it was almost too much. So those are my tracks overall.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
The things you don't see coming, I'm going to mention, which to start the record with that is, like Mike said, a very strong start, and I liked it a lot. Hearing this, I thought I was going to be getting like a concept album, which was weird. Like, I thought this was like, there was going to be like more of like a cohesive story. Like, this was the rap version of like a Coheed album or something. Wasn't that? But I thought I was getting that at first, which I was like, well, I didn't see that coming.
I'll mention something close to that later. I'm gonna mention something close to that later.
Oh, that'd be cool. If I could have more rap concept albums, that'd be dope. But the building of the music, the way the vocals sort of hit, is a really enticing way to start this album, I think. Demon, I'm gonna go off of that because I absolutely loved it. It was probably one of my favorite tracks on the album was Demon. The lyrical whiplash with the anger and the demon in the song. But if all three of us are in agreement that competitive nature needs to be talked about on this album, I think it's probably goes up there as like the song off this album. The mindset after with a lot of these tracks being, there's a Demon's like harsher things, harsher realities, and then like going into this like, nah, maybe this like competitive nature that I have isn't the healthiest thing for me, I think is a really good lyrical message overall. Something that I think needs to be said more, especially in like artistic endeavors. Sometimes being competitive and trying to lord it over others isn't the best. Like, make the best content that you can. Don't try to make it better than any one person, because that's just going to drag you down. I think it's a good message for that. And it's 7 minutes long. Like, you don't normally get rap songs that are like 6-7 minutes long, and it happens multiple times on this record. And I never felt it until I looked at the track listing and looked at the times, and I'm like, oh, that happened. That's weird. It flows really well. It's really well thought out. It's just a great song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, there's some really cool songs. I mean, what was said about competitive nature, all true. Especially kind of being the first. You kind of have this mood that you feel in with you feel with the first couple of tracks, and almost like the first couple of tracks being like an intro, but still being tracks on their own. But competitive nature is kind of like there's rapping before that, but it's the first track where suddenly on the wandering path that it goes on, it wanders back into close to being like a baseline hip hop song. Where it's a beat and he's laying bars over it. But it's still creative and still awesome, and but it's a kind of an interesting this is, and then it kind of veers off again, which is fantastic. And of course what was said about Five Sisters, Narcissus has a nice attitude for it to it. That I really enjoyed. Nice aggressive attitude to it, which I really enjoyed, and it worked really well. But yeah, let's bring it back around the horn, talk about some conclusive thoughts. David, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album as a whole?
Drew, I'm glad you brought up Coheed and Cambria, because I am going to go really off the rails here and give Tonedeff about as high a compliment as I can possibly give, and say he reminds me of my favorite metal band in the world, Dream Theater. And people that know me know I love Dream Theater. People will immediately point out Tonedeff's technical ability over songs like Dream Theater. But after that, they might just kind of dismiss him. And that's a shame. That is a detriment. But clearly, as you will see on this album, Tonedeff knows how to write songs, and he knows how to produce, and he knows how to be creative, and he knows how to be unique, and he knows how to pour his soul into albums. And when I saw some interviews where he was talking about people were getting tattoos of his lyrics. So these resonate deeply with people, and that is something to be celebrated. He's doing a lot of things on this album in terms of lyrical flow, storytelling, composition that will probably go over the heads of just a casual music listener.
Mm-hmm.
Not every track on this album is perfect in the same way, like Dream Theater. Not everything is perfect. And in my opinion, like Dream Theater, there are times where the technical ability and the speed does go a little over the top and does kind of lose the plot a little bit. However, overall, fantastic. It's creative, production is experimental, the features are really good, and Tonedeff as the centerpiece, he is an absolute master at his profession in all elements. He is a master. He's an absolute master.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what will be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
This album is one of those things where I'm going to dive in more from the artist afterwards. I would like to hear more. This album in particular is just a reminder of the cool things going on in rap and hip hop these days. It's just something that there is a really cool, creative nature that's bubbling under the surface. And every time you have somebody poking their head out and saying hey, we're down here, and then they have a hit. It's your Chance the Rapper is being hey, we're down here, and then Gambino, and it's and then someone like Tonedeff, one of these days he's gonna have the song that gets out there and is just does gangbusters, and just he's gonna kill it because it is so creative and it is so different, and it's not like a lot of the stuff that you've heard before. And I think that's a testament to the nature that you're getting within the music. It's like, okay, we're hitting a new era, we're hitting a new stride, and we're going to think more about it than just the rapping, just the parties, just the this, just the that. And we're going to start putting thought into the musicality of it. We're going to start putting thought into, okay, well, if this beat is here with this melody, what is my drum beat with my lyrical flow going to be, and how does that mix in? And I think that's really, really cool and makes for some really inventive, creative music. And I think that this album is testament to that. It's something that I think a lot more people should like take an ear for, because there's a lot here for a lot of different people. Even Squiggles, who is not a huge rap fan, I think will get something out of this record.
Yes. Squiggles. I always want to hear anytime what he thinks of any hip hop record.
Yes. I would. If you're listening still, Squiggles, please let me know what you think of this record.
Yes. I don't know if you can tell by the fact that I'm sitting here in a Mega Ran dad hat and a Creative Mindframe t-shirt. But I like hip hop. I like clever hip hop. I like smart hip hop. I like people who have a passion for hip hop and who can do so cleverly and with some smarts behind it. And that's what I love about this. It's smart, it's creative, it's diverse, it's emotional. It resonates in a really, really cool way. It goes a lot of different places, but without necessarily losing focus too much. It is really cool. It is a really cool record that I'm glad I know now who Tonedeff is. There's a lot of elements of this that remind me of a lot of the hip hop that I love, that truly resonates with me, and that's why I think I connected with this record really well. Just based off of that, this is a fantastic hip hop plus record that I think just works so well and is so well made. Yeah, last but not least, Mike, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album as a whole?
I feel like even underneath the flaws that it has, like, definitely to the average listener, he's going to get put in that rapidy rap, super backpack, super underground. Some of the angst might be a turn off, but underneath all of that, there's so much like genius going on with this album. I think my main takeaway was that he really, for me, just kind of pushed the boundaries of what a hip hop album can sound like. Like, he went so many different directions, and they all worked out. And not everybody will be able to pull this off, because I think he is kind of a special talent. Like, just his vocal ability and the things that he can do with his voice and his flow, not everybody may be able to pull off. But at least in terms of like music production and topics and song structure and all of like the technical things about this album, I would hope this album would be more recognized so that people could really hear like hip hop can go a lot of different directions. And I think it'd be important for a lot of other artists to listen to this, to kind of pull something from this. Like there's so much creativeness in hip hop that doesn't get displayed. And I think this album kind of showcases how far you can really, really push this genre. You can go a lot of different directions and still keep it hip hop in nature, but you can still be just really, really creative. And that's just really what I loved about this album. It was so outside of the box. It was completely left field, but it still worked because it was just very well composed, very well put together. This is the result of an album when you actually sit down and think about what you're doing instead of just pumping out something cookie cutter just to put something out. Like, he clearly sat down and thought about this, and probably, well, from the documentary, if you guys watch, you'll see, worked like a madman drinking Red Bulls while he was in the booth just to spit to rap so fast. Yeah. But yeah, like if if you really sit down and really put your heart and soul into something, you can come out with something like this, and this is a great thing. Yeah. So that's my takeaway. It's this album just really outside of the box, really pushing the boundaries. So always appreciate that about this album.
Plus he's Cuban, so big ups to that, man. Yeah,
you can drink some cafecito in his honor, PD.
Yeah. Cheers. Some cafecito. Got the shot right here. With plenty of azúcar. Those are our thoughts on Tonedeff's Polymer. Now we get to the main event of the evening. We get to our haiku reviews. We're all summed up in poetic form. So let's get down to it. David, what is your haiku?
Tonedeff's Polymer. A hip-hop album you need. You'll realize it soon.
Yes. Drew, what is your haiku?
A very quick flow with great lyrics to match it. Show this dude respect.
Mm-hmm. My haiku, while I burp for a moment, my haiku is a gifted artist with many tools in his bag to tell you his story, to tell you his truth. To tell you his truth. Mike, last but not least, your haiku.
Cinematic flow, genre-bending performance, experience life.
Yes. It is a fantastic record. You're going to, of course, listen to this album on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers the home game. Do your due diligence and your dude diligence. Before I tell you about next week's record and next week's episode, I want to thank Mike. Mike, thank you for being on with us for these few episodes. Hopefully we'll have you back. Where can people check you out? Where can people see you in the world?
If you want to find me, of course, on Twitter, @SerialSensei. If you want to hear me ramble about mixed martial arts, if that's your thing, you can listen to me on the Dojo Talk podcast, which is on SoundCloud and Spotify. And I also, under that same channel, ramble about album reviews on another podcast called the Sounds Like Fun podcast. So basically, just type in Serial Sensei in your Googles and you will find me somewhere.
Yeah, so go check them out. Next week's record is my pick. First of all, we're going to have a guest. Obviously, we're going to have a new person in a rotating chair. We're still planning with him, but it's going to be somebody who I realize I don't have his last name, but he of Blade Licking Thieves and the Super Senpai podcast. We have Grant the Thief.
The man.
Be on. So he's going to be cool. And he's going to join us for a set of episodes, so look forward to that starting next week, which next week will be my record. And we're gonna stay in New York, and we're gonna stay with hip hop. We're gonna stay with an album that I'm interested in, and I haven't fully listened to, but I checked out. It's gonna be a rapper that let's all go on this journey together a little bit. A rapper by the name of Mike. No, not this Mike. It's another Mike.
No relation.
Yeah, I have no albums.
The album is Renaissance Man. So look forward to that. But that is next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Drew is at XDrewCipherX. Mike is, of course, at Serial Sensei. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com is the email. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, comment, give us feedback. Let us know what you think of the album. Yell.
Don't be a hater. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Give us a positive in all of the podcatching reviewers.
If you're a good
Spread the
person,
word.
you'll
Share
get
it.
5 stars.
If you made it this
And
far
then
into the
unsubscribe
episode,
and resubscribe. Unsubscribe and resubscribe. Give those numbers a jump.
yes. If you're this far into the episode, even though you were clicking on here expecting to get a bootleg version of the album, hey, we entertained you this far. You can't hate. So just give us some love. So give us a like.
And listen to the album legally. God's sakes.
You know what? If you hate us, though, that's fine, too. I understand.
Just legally support this artist. Legally support Tonedeff. Legally.
It's on Bandcamp. You have no excuse.
Yes, go listen to it there and then give him some love. But yeah, do the damn thing. Share, subscribe, do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodle toot.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.